Hello everybody. Good evening everybody. How are we tonight? Sorry, a bit of a technical problem there. Okay, so sort of jump on. It's our last one tomorrow. It's done well. A lot of people really liked it, so we may carry on doing some once a week, maybe in February. If you've not signed up to the newsletter or to Subtone Music Academy, please go to subtonemusicacademy.com and sign up for the taster plan, and you get more information and get some free stuff. You can also email us, let us know what you're looking for from these, and yeah, we'll carry on from there. All these are kind of off the cuff. They were meant to be just so people could ask me questions, but they haven't really asked me lots of questions. So I'm just going to come up with a topic each night. So tonight I thought I'd come up with phase. Okay. So phase issues. A lot of people have heard about it, they don't know what it is. So phase is the position of the cycle of the audio wave that you've got. And when things are out of phase, they say they are like they're flipped 180 degrees opposite each other. And that what that means is when you've got the wave and it goes the peak and then down to the trough and then the peak and the trough, and you put two waves next to each other and you flip one so the peak is the same position of the trough, they cancel each other out when they're flipped 180 degrees. So that's what phase is. Let me give you an example and why it can be problematic. So if we listen here, I have got a sine wave. Sorry about that. So here we've got a single sine wave. And then if I duplicate that, I get this. So let's have a look at that. That's it. -6. Duplicate it. -1.83. So it kind of virtually doubles the sound. Okay. So with that, if I flip the polarity of the phase of the left to the right using this plugin, what do I get? I get this. They cancel each other out. Okay, so what you're going to be mindful of is for example, the kick and the bass. You know, if you're lining up the early parts of the kick and the bass, or where the colour is, and the phase is opposite and they're in the same key, they're going to cancel each other out in them parts. Now, it's very rare you do get that. But what happens is this. You get a strength, like a weakness, where things can become weaker and stronger. So if I've got this in here like this, and I take off the left and right, I'll leave it on. So if I move this, if I move the phase, so it's not 180 degrees, it's just getting slightly out. As I move it, and I'm basically delaying the time so they're not exactly matched up 180 degrees opposite each other. Hey Adrian, what I'm doing is I'm turning down the volume or turning up the volume depending on where the phase is to each other. Now, how does that affect us? Well, imagine if that's a kick in the bass, right? You've got your kick in and it's in F, and you've got your bass in, it's in F, and the bass and the kick can be cancelling each other out. So the problem with that is you don't get as much punch or as much smack. And stereo imaging can create a little bit more of this. So it's always good to go into your kick and your bass if you're being really geeky. And a lot of people do this and line them up and just have a look here. You know, look at the frequencies and the peaks. Obviously, this is not a sine wave, but and then look at the kick the same, and just see, you know, if they're lined up or they're opposite. And if you moved the bass, obviously you never want the kick to be off the point. If you move the bass slightly to the right or to the left, usually to the right, looking at the screen, you know, and you can align the bass at where the kick comes through a bit stronger. And it's like this. You just make sure that this wave, you know, is not opposite the other wave of the kick. And you can go in, you can look at it, but really all I do is I might use a plugin like Emeline or this track delay and use my ears and just try and move the bass slightly. Yeah. And when I move the bass slightly, sometimes the kick comes through a little bit more, and that's because there's not cancelling out of each other. Now, this is something I think you should be mindful of, specifically if you really want your tracks to kick, okay, and really punch through. And we're just talking about the kick in the bass at the moment, right? But look what happens. Okay, let's just say you look at them, you get them lined up, okay, and they sound better. And if I've got the operator here, so I've got two playing at the same time and they're opposite. So this is perfectly aligned. This is 180 degrees phase swap. Now listen what happens when I put this EQ on. Nothing. Okay, let's put a low cut on. What that's done is that low cut has changed the phase, okay? So that phase, that low cut you put on your kick or your bass could possibly be moving the phase slightly, changing the phase so that you're getting less energy in your kick. And this is what you're going to be mindful of. You've got to tune into it and listen to it yourself. You know, isolate it with Metric KB or whatever. But this works in all the frequencies. So when things sound phasey, it just means that two waves are at 180 degrees. Generally, they won't be the same frequency and they won't be at the same point, but there's still that degree of just slight cancellation. And when things are oscillating with other things and moving because of stuff like saturation or aliasing or all that kind of stuff, the fact that it's moving, that one of the harmonics is moving, yeah, creates a phase with what it's getting in the way with. The way of, that's what happens when you're hearing phasing specifically. And all I do, I like to keep it as simple as possible. All I do is try and use my ears. So what I'll do is every time I put something onto something, I'll get the kick and the bass and I'll transfer them to audio and I'll just have a look at them. And sometimes just by using my eyes and making sure that the key parts of them aren't opposites at 180 degrees, I will get it so the kick comes through a lot more, or we have a bit more bass. Now, it is important, this, and I think dance tracks, this is something that we need to be looking at, and I do look at it quite often. Most tracks, to be quite honest with you, when I'm not being lazy. And there's lots of things that create kind of phase, like stereo wideners are really bad for it. You know, sometimes we want that phase sound with phasers and all that kind of stuff. But if you're trying to get a really punchy track, just be very mindful when you've got two things in the same area of the phase. And yeah, and remember that when you put plugins on, they will change, specifically EQ, they will change the phase at that point of where you're putting the EQ in. And that's why if you put a low cut on the bass, you know, and you don't necessarily want to add a bit of a phase bump, then sometimes that's why linear phase EQ is best on the bottom end. Now, I'm not going to go into this because there's amazing videos on the internet you can watch by FabFilter that they can create pre-ringing. But again, I just use my ears. But if you've got something lined up and it sounds great, but anything you put in can create that bit of phasing. So that's why it's always best. And the more phase you get can be from the thinner of the cue. So that's why it's always good just to like kind of broad EQs a lot of the time, and not doing lots of little cuts and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's how I think about phasing. It was just a bit of a last minute thing. I didn't prepare for tonight. I was hoping that some of you would have some questions for me. So, you know, the older I've got and the more I've mixed, the more I try to use less plugins as possible and just get the best sounds, as you've heard me say time and time again over January. But knowing what this is just done by flipping it and moving it, you can hear how the signal gets stronger and weaker. And what we're trying to do is trying to get the strongest signal all the time. Nine Northtown says, gets real messy when you have kick bass and deep tribal like Tom. Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of melodic techno, and sometimes they do have the kick in F, and they use kick, and they'll have the bass in F, and they'll have an EQ in the project, and I'll take, and the kick and the bass are starting right, I'll take the EQ off where they've got a low cut, and suddenly the kick comes through. That's all it could be sometimes. And you've got to be mindful and tuned into it. That's why I do frequency recognition on my one-to-ones. It's a frequency character recognition is the key to mixing and making good sample choices. So yeah, so that's phasing it, and just be mindful that most things that you put on plugins will add a little bit of phase. You've just got to be able to identify whether it's good or bad. So that's phase issues. Any questions for me, everybody? It's actually our last night tomorrow. I am going to do some more, but it's our last night. There's a few more people watching. Ask us any questions regarding music production, regarding regarding the music industry. That's why I'm here. So, okay. Did that make sense to you? It was a bit off the top of my head, to be honest with you. Okay, so last night we looked at this track. And I said I wasn't going to do any more on it because I keep doing my own heading with my tracks. Well, you know, Nine said to me he didn't like the strings. And to be honest with you, somebody else said the strings would compete with the vocals. And I was like, it was borderline. I don't know what's happened there. All the levels have gone all over the place. But, yeah, I decided, I do like the strings when they're over here. I've been exporting stuff today on it, so. I don't know what's happened to the mix there. But anyway, so what I've done is I've sent it back to the guy who does the strings and asked him to follow the vocal. I want to get a mix between the original string, which is probably the end of it, and the strings following the vocal, because it did my head in this morning when I come back to it. So he's redoing that for me. And then I promise this is going to be, well, when I've redone the mix, some of the levels have gone to pot there. This is going to be the last of it. But yes, when is the mix, the final mix? That's the point. I'm definitely going to be getting this out after that. I do like the track. I listened to it this morning, and the first thing I do is I go back with fresh ears and listen to the track and go, oh yeah, that's better. You know, or oh yeah, you know, I do like this. I do like this. It was just that one bit there that I didn't like. So I'll get the new strings in, mix it down, and then Bob's your uncle. Evening, Victor, Adrian, how are we all tonight? Have we got any questions for me? Talking about phasing, you know, just be mindful of the plugins that you're using. I think I told you on one of these, I had a track that was meant to be mastered, and I was using Imager by Ozone, and I had it on the plugin for some reason, on the channel for some reason, instead of on Ascend, which is the way I normally do it, and it was just creating some phase issues. So yeah, be very careful with EQs, with specifically fine EQs, and then take it from there. I house you. Sorry, I've been absolutely flat out today. I've not had a second to get back to you. Any questions for us? No? Okay. Right, let's talk about automation. I want to go through this because at the end of every track, I'm going to explain to you. I'm going to do a track this week, and in this track, I'm going to show you how I produce a track, how I think about and produce a track, and all the things I teach people. It's going to be quite a long one, and I'll put it up on YouTube. But one of the key things that I don't see on people's tracks is automation, okay? And I have levels and levels of automation all the time, right, on everything. So particularly like this, so if I've got some drums like this, and I'll think, right, okay, the open hat's a bit loud in the beginning, before the drums come in. I'll get it. I will get the gain. And then I will just maybe turn it down a dB there. And it just lifts it up very, very slightly. You know, very, very slightly. What is that? So 1 dB. It just gives it a lift up. And I'll go through everything. So, hey Siebes fam, there's no right and no wrong to this, but for me, it's always at the end, right? Because I want to get a balanced track. So the first thing I need to do, you know, is get the right sounds, make sure they're right, okay, in the mix, and then I'll arrange it, you know, and then I'll try and mess around with changing the hi-hat out here or do some fills and all that kind of stuff. And the last two things that I do and go to is, first of all, I've got a great mix. Does it sound great? Okay, let's make the track move a little bit with automation of all kinds of things. So like volume's a really big one. It might be a reverb on a clap every now and then. It might be endless smile, I see a lot of people do. It might be a phaser that only comes in here. It might be a filter on the drums, which only comes in, you know, there. Or it might be a filter on the hi-hats that only comes in certain places. And I'll just try and make it move a little bit. I might go into like a certain area and stereo, add a bit of width to something, you know, maybe a bit of reverb to something, or you know, another hat that's just like a, if I've got a hat like this one, now I could possibly on top of that add something like this. This. Just a really high, you know, really high. I could add something like that. You don't really hear. A lot of these things you don't hear coming through the mix, but they just make it feel like it's alive and coming through. And like somebody said, wow, that's a load of effects yesterday. But these effects are all doing different things, and they're not all right in my face. You know, a lot of them are just back and just little things that just, ooh, that's nice, and just make things just a bit smoother and go into things. Everything doesn't have to be full on and forward in the mix. So automation is the key to it. You know, a lot of things like this, I'll automate these where they are on the track, but it's dead easy. It's more easier just to go click on them and then, you know, be down here and change this. So I'll do that a lot of the time. I'll do the volume and stuff like this. And like where the hi-hats, oh, if I've got open hat throughout the track, I'll turn it down when there's less in the track, because I don't need it to cut through as much. And automation is massive for me. It's the last thing I do, and I'll think, right, okay, what can I do on this open hat, right, in the chorus, okay? Well, what can I do on there? Right, well, maybe I could put on a Pultec. Okay. I'd find something that was quite nice, and then what I would do is just double click on that, so that's off, and then turn it on just in the chorus. So get it. So find that there, and then just go to, for some reason it's not doing it. Oh, there you go. 50% there, and just so it just picks it up a little bit. And it just adds a tiny bit of air and loads of different things. If you do that to loads of different little things, you know, sometimes reverb, sometimes a bit of stereo spread on certain things, you know, on a send, just little things, and automate everything all the way through the track. You know, like I might take that open hat down in the verse. Obviously, I'll be doing all this using my ears. So for me, automation is the key, and that's what to making your track move. And I get tracks and nobody automates, and then they put a compressor on something in the chorus because in the verses it sounds too loud, and it comes to the chorus and it's over compressed. You know, so this is about automation, and this is the final. You know, this is the final bit of mixing for me. This. Making sure I've got enough of these, and what I do is this: I go through it, I get to the beginning of the track, and I go, right, let's go bar by bar. Okay. Okay, I like that. That's working with it. I've got the effects. Then I've got the boost on the hi-hat. Just go through every sound, all different, and just make the track move a little bit. I might just, like I just did there with that Pultec with a bit of top end, I might just add a little bit of phaser or flanger or anything that just makes it sound a bit interesting. And it's not just, you know, it doesn't have to be on everything all the time. Just little things over there that sound like a nice touch. Like I might get the drums going into the verse and go. So I might get the drums. Put on a Decimo. And then what I might just do here is get it so it goes like this. You know, just a little something like that, right? But then what I might do is go, right, okay, I don't want that in there. So what I might do with that is go to the plugin, turn it on and off, and then go like this. So it's not, I'm not getting any of the effects of it, of what that does. Just do it that little bit. And obviously level match it before I do that. And it just adds a nice little touch. Something like that might work. There's loads of little things that you can do that just make it a little bit more interesting. So, yeah, this, guys, you should be hammering it, automation, hammering the transitions, and I'm just trying to make a lot of it so really, really, really small. You know, set yourself to doing 15 every track. Well, obviously the kick might not, well, it might do. Sometimes the kick might be lower in volume in the beginning. If I start off with a full kick, it might just be a dB, and then when the bass comes in, it goes up another dB, and so on and so on. Use your imagination. There's so many things that you can do that just give things a little lift, like that little Pultec trick on the hi-hats in the chorus. You know, there's so many plugins you've got, and you're just messing around with all the different things, and one day you might go, oh, that's really good. Like that thing with the D16 there. I was doing a track. I was just trying to get the drums sounding like that, and I was just started moving that knob and thought, oh, that'll sound good going into a break, and that's how I learnt it. You know, it's just a lot of things are happy accidents that you've got to think about. Automation, always do it, and as you've probably seen on my master bus, I'm a pre-master, I've got the volume automation, so when the breaks I take it down. But automation is key, and I'd say 90% of people don't do it before they come to me. Okay, Adrian says, do you recommend any MIDI devices to write automation? Okay, so what DAW do you use, Adrian? Okay, so it's funny you asked me that, actually. So I've got the push. So that's all you need, really, with Ableton. If you've got push, it's automatically maps. It's no messing around, no nothing. But just got this. So this is the Arturia beat step. And the reason why I got it was to control this. The kick machine. Because there's no real yeah, it's a bit messy going into different parameters. So got this so I can make kicks automatically. But anything like this, you know, this is I got it for 50 quid, and it's quite good actually. It's quite heavy. It seems quite solid, and then I can use that to control all the parameters, and then I'll map some of this stuff on there. And then what I'll do, I'll use this for other projects. So I've got that, but I use push. I use Ableton all the time now, so I don't really need it. But I've got that. I've also got this. Which, Launch Key by Novation. And again, some simple keys. I got this because when the Prophet was away, I didn't have pitch bend or modulation. So I got this for that. But also anything. Listen, it's dead easy. Anything that connects, just try it. You don't need to go expensive with it all. It's you know, have a think about what you're looking for and what you can map it to, and then great. Oh, you're in Studio One, Adrian. Okay, well then the Novation's really good for Studio One. I've got to say, the one thing that bugs me about Studio One is setting up external hardware and MIDI controllers. But that's what that's why I got that as well. I got that, the Novation, for Studio One. Now, remember I just said to you that Ableton Push is perfect for Ableton. Well, for Studio One, you've got the PreSonus stuff, which is exactly the same. So that's going to be better for that. find out what's best for your DAW. I think there's something for Logic as well that was, you just plug it in and you play it. And remember, there's only so many parameters you can change at the same time. And what I like to do is I like to, you know, as you can see here, modulate certain things by hand. There's certain things I do by hand, and that'll be like filters and, you know, cut-offs, and resonance and stuff that I can do together. Decay to give something a bit of a journey. And then the other automation I'll do by hand like this. Like I know I want it to boost there. I'm not going to mess around with it. Fanning around doesn't need it really. But I found that is really good. Now, to be quite honest with you, I have no idea how I'm going to set this up. You know, I'm going into the realm now of MIDI CC, CC channels, CC numbers. And what I have to do is I have to find out the CC of each of the things on the M bass, you know, and map it to this. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet, to be quite honest with you, because I've never really done it. Because all I've ever done is go into studios where it's already been set up, and we're not using MIDI as such, but we've just recorded sounds in. And then I've used Ableton when I've been using more MIDI devices, and that just does it automatically. I've never used my hardware as MIDI really, to control MIDI or to control parameters, which you can do. Whatever you've got in, you can use. But yeah, this is pretty solid. This is a pretty good thing. Like I said, I got it for 50 quid, second hand. This is really good. Any questions? Okay, cool. Does that? The automation is what I'll do once I've got an arrangement. So like I'll find a synth, you know, and then like what I'll do is like, so this, if it was hardware, is it hardware? What for here? So on other tracks, what I do, I get the hardware, I record in an 8-bar loop, find everything that I've got, arrange it, the audio and the MIDI. So yeah, this is a good journey, right? And then what I'll do is I'll get the MIDI and I'll record directly in from the Prophet or the Moog or the 303. And then when I've got the arrangement, then I'll create the automation of the filters or, you know, the envelopes or whatever I might want to automate. And it's the same with everything else, because you've got to get your journey right in the song without it all. And I think you've got to get it so that it's, there's no point automating stuff unless you've locked in with the arrangement. And I like my arrangement to work first by taking out a couple of kicks, you know, filtering the first bit of the kick, taking out a couple of kicks, bit of fills, bit of gaps, to see, you know, does that work without that? Now let's make it move a bit more with everything else. Unless it's like the other track we've been working on, which was the sequential. I would have got that beat and got a bit of got the arrangement together, and then I would have made the journey work with the lead, because the lead's the most important thing, and then work down from there. Bobby Hoskin says, would you consider maybe starting a writing session one time from the very start of initial idea? Do you know something? It would be such a long video to do that, and I have done one on Fader Pro, but what I'm going to do is, and I'm doing this next week, I'm going to do a full-length video of how I write. So writing's about what's in your head. So if you're not a keyboard player like me, I mean, I was a paramedic, and I didn't know anything about music. I just loved music and I loved DJing, and I used to go to the raves and go to the hacienda. And then I go to the record shops. And then after a few years, I was doing really well DJing, and started a night up in Manchester. Still a paramedic. And the guy in the record shop said, oh, come in the studio. And I was like, nah, because a nun told me I couldn't. I would never be able to do music, and I believed her. Anyway, and eventually he said, come in for free, and I just thought, I like this guy. He's still a friend of mine till today. And I went in the studio when I got the bug, and I just every night at home, on the computer, learning that way. And I've always, going back to your point, I've always, gone in the studio. When I was learning to produce, I was always going to the studio with other people. And even now, I can do a bit of keys, but really I always use somebody else to come in. And I know what I want before they come. So, I work with a guy called Davos. You might have all heard of him. If you need a keyboard player, he's really good. And he comes to my group, but I have to be there because I know what I want. And every time I've used a keyboard player and I've said, I want something like this, and give them references, they don't quite get it. So you've got to be there in person. Because I live miles away, I get my guy to come up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a video of just the MIDI, and then I'm going to show you how I choose all the sounds. Because how you write the song is I always start with the lead. So I'll show you that and find you the sounds that I've chosen, how I've got there, and then how I've built the track, how I'm thinking whilst I'm doing it. Got all the sounds together, got the arrangement, and done everything that we've just said. I'm going to go through the whole thing, do the automation, do the EQ, everything, and just go through it and go to extremes so you can learn every little thing. But I am planning on doing that, and I have done that for a course for Fader Pro. I'm going to try and incorporate everything into it. Any questions, everybody? How you enjoyed Studio One, Adrian? I loved it. I do love it, but the reason why I don't use it is because nobody else uses it, and I'm working with lots of other people. The second reason I don't use it is because I can't get past not having simpler, sampler, and drum rack. A little sampler in every single drum rack. And I could put a synth in each of those. I just think just to getting ideas together and the clip view and everything else. I think Studio One's got that now, hasn't it? I just can't get past it. The ease of getting ideas together and tracks together. Plus, most of my clients are Ableton, so I'm always wanting to be as good as I can on it. Yeah, finishing a track is pretty hard, and one of the things, this is what I do, I help people like you get to the point of finishing tracks with one-to-ones. Use references, just the key about music is feeling it and imagining you on the dance floor. So if I had a load of money, which I haven't because I keep buying stuff, to do with work, if I had a lot of money and I lived in London, I would probably go in with an engineer myself, right? Maybe get some ideas together and go with an engineer, because when I used to make the music back in the day, when I learned from people like me, okay? And I was stood behind, so I wasn't thinking about the computer, I wasn't thinking about compression, I wasn't thinking about reverb. All I was thinking about was, is this making me dance, right? And they're some of the best records ever made. And I've just become really technically good through working with loads of people and going and paying to be with the best people in the UK. But my best music as a DJ and a producer came from being stood behind, because that's where the creativity comes from. Almost everyone that I know, like producer-wise, that are massive DJs, you see it regularly, your Nick Vantulis, your Mark Knights, your Michael Grays, most people, a lot of people are using an engineer. Like me and Mark Knight started off together, right? And he could do a little bit, and he can obviously do well now, but he still uses James Herr, which you see him fully admit to, and that's because he can be more creative behind here and all just put forward in his ideas of what he wants to hear as a DJ or feel on the dance floor. And for me, it's the best way to learn. That's how I learn. You know, do I wish I went to university and studied music? Yeah, I do, because it took a long time to learn certain things. But on the same thing, you know, I know when something sounds bad and I know when something sounds good. Siebes fam. Jason, I can do great intros, not get into the drop and get stuck out of it too. I suppose that's the same as Bobby just said, to be honest. Okay, so it's everything. The lead is the most important part of the track. You get the lead right, yeah. Lead one might be a synth. Lead two, if you're doing tech house, might be a bass, and then you kick, and then your drums, right? Copy and arrangement. So you should never copy. Right? I will never copy an arrangement of another track. I will feel the track. But whilst you're learning, copy exactly everything in a track, right? So what I would say to someone is, I've given this track here, right? And I would say, right, I want you to copy this track, right? And then they copy this track. So the kick's filtered, that's there. There is a volume up on the guitar coming in there. There's the bass. Hang on a second. The hi-hat seems to go louder. There's a crash there. There's a reverse there. There's a little effects there. There's that there, right? Tune into all the different sounds and just copy the journey of tracks that you really like and you know that you work for now. And by doing that, you know, once you've applied, get your killer lead, lead one, lead two, lead three, whatever it is, right? Get a tune that's similar and copy the arrangement of something from the kicks, the double kicks, the fills, the filter on the piano, you know, and there'll be stuff that you don't, what's that? How have they done that? Oh, he's got decimo and he's turned it down so it's going lower bit rate going into that bit. And just figure it out and try and learn it, or ask me and say, well, how do you do this? And, you know, do that. Copy them at first, right? And feel it. But the first thing that I always do is, you know, I'll get a track and I'll go, is this finished? And I'll do this quite a few times whilst making the track. Get the arrangement done. I'll do this now. So I'll go through all the automation when I get the strings back and I'll do all this. I'll go, right, that's finished. Okay. But I'm sat here. I need to feel it a bit more. So what I'll do is I'll take the screen off and I'll go and I'll turn around and I'll dance to it from beginning to end, right? And what that does is it just makes me feel the track and the journey. Go, is this right? Is that right? Oh, could I do something there? And if something goes, oh, is that? I don't know if that's right. I get rid of it straight away. If I don't know it's right, that means there's something negative about it. So get rid of it. So learn how people transition and do the journeys, and listen to all the parts in the mix. Break it down, and just try and copy it. And then you'll get ideas, and then eventually, you know, you'll be making music for how it makes you feel on the journey from the first beat to the last beat. You know, and ask yourself, well, what can I do at this point just to lift things up a little bit? You know, if your drop's not big enough, right, that's because your break's too big. You know, so like I said, you see me volume down, and I see this problem a lot of the time, right? So what happens is the energy, let's say this is energy, right? The energy goes up in the break, a big snare roll, and then drops into drop, the drop dies, right? And that's because they've built up all this energy and the volume, when really you can build up that energy, right? But turn the volume down, because in a club, you're still going to hear it. Because the most important thing is when it hits that drop, it hits in. And there's ways around that. But, you know, the other thing is less is more sometimes. But again, you've got to remember that when you've got snare rolls and rises and all this kind of stuff, you've got all these frequencies building up, right? And then when you go into drop, you've just got a kick and a bass and something else. And it's like, oh, it doesn't work. And the reason is that, you know, them frequencies have overpowered, have got so much energy that the energy in that isn't enough. But if you turn down the volume of them, you know, but they still get the energy in the break and the build up, because people are still going to go crazy to them snare rolls and the rises. Turn the volume down, and then when it kicks in, have a little gap, you know, like a 2-bar gap, you know, it's a bit obvious, but spoken vocal, you know, and then bang, kick in. What you do is that little gap before the drop takes all the energy out for a second. So drops the energy all the way down and then kicks back in higher. But you've disassociated yourself with this drum roll here. So the combination of those things is what you need to do. Okay. 9 Northtown has asked, is it really that hard to work with others who use method or devices, software, etc.? Do you mean, is it hard for me to work with clients? Because I work in clients' projects. So so what I do is I send a video to all my clients how to prepare their sets, and that's down to colour scheme and everything else. Because when you come in with me, whether it's just for one session or the full one-to-one mentorship, we don't want to be wasting time doing homekeeping. So if I go to, and I send them this document, which reminds me I've got to send it to someone. I've just got all my plugins so they can look at it. And then they'll know when to change something or to bounce something down. I'll just ask them to bounce it down with, oh no, you can't see that, can you? So all I do is I send them a link to a video, and then I send them this document. It's got all my plugins on there. What I'll do is I'll then just send them this, and they'll know what I've got and what I haven't got. And then anything that I don't have, they'll bounce down without the reverbs and delays on, because generally a lot of the time that's a problem. So yes, that's what I do. Hi Bobby. It's a place I go and have a nosy about getting on your client list. Yeah. You should be joining our mailing list anyway. Because I'm going to be uploading loads of videos up there. If you go there, sign up for the taster plan. All the information's on there. You can ask DJ questions, Adrian. Of course you can. God, I've been doing it for years. In fact, do you know what I'm going to do? I've just done a video today that's going up on my YouTube for clients. Like I don't do DJ lessons because it's just too expensive for people. But somebody's asked me to do them some DJ lessons. Okay, and I'm trying to get them to work the way that I do and I think. So I'll tell you how I think when I'm DJing. But any questions? Yeah, feel free to ask me anything to do with the music industry, to do with DJing. Hi, James. You okay, mate? Let's just load up record box. Oh, just 1 second. Let's get this loaded up. I'll just move it out of the way. See. Okay. Adrian says, thank you, Jason. You have a lot of experience doing international gigs. How do you usually set up the gain on the mixer when you are playing out? Okay, well, the first thing is you just keep everything at 12 o'clock and don't go into the red. And it's as simple as that, right? Your tracks should all be the same level. You're going to have a sound engineer there, and he really should be controlling the volumes. Yeah, don't go in the red because it's clipping. It's as simple as that. And the thing is, you know, if you've got a sound engineer working in the club that's, you know, limiting the sound at a certain level, it still sounds terrible. That's why you go to clubs and your ears come out of the ringing, because half of the stuff's just clipping and distorted. So yeah, try not to go in the red, which, you know, anyone who's seen me DJ back in the day, Ahmed, always in the red. So yes, yeah, don't worry about that. Just concentrate on your monitor level and let the engineer do that. And the other thing that I do is this, I turn down the DJ before me. If there's in the red, I just turn it down straight away. So people get their ears ready for the volume before I go on, or I'll drop it down. Because I want it to be as nice, I want it to be as punchy, I don't want the kicks to be broken up. Okay. Yeah, every club has their own setup. So it's a hard one to answer. But basically, as a rule, I try not to go in the red. I'm very mindful. I do every now and then because I'm always pushing for loudness. And what I do is sometimes I'll drop the volume down with the fader and turn it back up on the gain. I ask because you seem very set in your methods, which makes sense because it works. Does it kind of limit you with others? Listen, I wasn't like this. You know, I'm 50. I'm 54 next week. And trust me, when I was DJing traveling the world, I was partying, and you know there was no, it just happened. There was no model I was working to then. I was just making music because I loved it and going out and partying and everything else. And to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons I wish I had more of a business mind. But in them days, a lot of people didn't. They didn't have a business mind. Hey, Buddy Chris, hope you're good. So I'll tell you how I set up my music for DJing. I've just done a video on this. So let's get a track I've not got in. So the first thing you need to remember about record box is this, okay? Is that wherever you put the file, wherever the file is that you drag into record box, it has to stay there. Because if you move the file or change the name of the file anywhere in that whole directory going from Jason Hurd's Mac Studio, if you change anything, record box is going to get this red exclamation mark coming up here saying it doesn't know where the file is, even though it's there. Record box could be better in this area, but the way I work is this. So let's just have a look. So let's just say I've downloaded this track. I downloaded tracks. Let's have a look. So I've got these two from somebody. They were references for a client. So I'll get these two tracks and I drag them in. Okay. And now, if I'd have put these into a folder, then into record box, right, and then decided I want to do mixing key is going to change the name of these files. Okay. So what's going to happen there is record box is not going to see them because it's changed the name of them. Okay. So the first thing, guys, that I do is bring them in mixed in key, and I'll show you in a second why I put them in mixed in key, right? So I get that, and then I get my folder. Okay, and I've got my Dropbox. In Dropbox, I've got Dropbox and then DJ folder, which I've dragged into the side here. I've got Hurdy DJ set. And then I've got Jason Hurd, no, I forgot Deep House. I'll put them in Deep House, right? So then I've got them, and I can drag them in there. Okay. They're in there, and then what I'm going to do is go to Deep House here. Now, with my folder set up and all my names are on the computer, I've had to do exactly the same in record box, okay? This is where it just is really frustrating, right? Because really you should have file import, right? So let's say I've got another track. If I'm on this project, right? and I go File, Import, Import Track, and I go Downloads. So I've just downloaded one of my tracks from 14 years ago. So let's say I import this track here, right? I import it. It's not gone into the folder, right? It just goes into my general thing, which means then I then have to drag it in, which is a pain in the backside. So what I do is I go to the track, I put it mixed in key, I put it in the folder in my DJ folder, and then I drag and drop it in the folder of the same name here. Okay, like this. Like that. Okay, so really what you should be able to do is import. What really you need from Rekordbox is to be able to go File, Import, go to the folder where you've put it in, import all the tracks and go, you've already got these. Do you not want to add, do you still want to add them? And you put no, and it just adds in all the new tracks. So what's going to happen now is every time I buy something from Beatport or TrackSource, I've got to go through this process, which if you're paying that much money for a subscription, you know, the software should be better than this. It should be making it easier. So yeah, so I drag them in and I do that, okay? And then the next thing is where's that one? Date added. So let's just say I pull in, I better use one of my tracks actually. So let's get, let's drag that one in. I know it's got no tunes. I've not put it in there. So this is a record from 14 years ago that I had. So I drag it, I put it in there. The first thing I do is make sure that this is on the one, the red. So if it's not, yeah, I go into grid, press this and make sure that it is, okay? So when I'm DJing, I want, like I've got that many records, sometimes I forget the record. So if I'm preparing for a set, what I would do is this, right? I'd find the first beat of the bar and I create a cue point. So if you know what cue point is, it's one of them buttons on your CDJ or controller that you just press and straight away plays it. Is that coming out of the... Okay, you can hear that. I can't hear that for some reason. So I'll do got preferences, audio, no, not Zoom, universal audio. Okay, so I got an A there, and then I'll go along and I'll look for the bass. Okay, so let's just say, right, and remember guys, I made this record 14 years ago. So let's just say that's where the music comes in, right? So let's say the music or the vocals come in there, right? I've only got 6 cue points. I don't need to press a button to go to that point, right? So I'll create a memory point. What I do is I go press Q, then memory, and then it comes up with a point there, and I colour it. So yellow means bass coming in, because obviously like bass is yellow in my projects. Okay. Oh, you know, sorry, can you not see me? Let's move me. Okay, so the bass comes in. Okay. Okay, so let's just say the vocal comes in there, right? I want to know where the vocal's in because this has got quite a long intro, and if I've not played it for ages, there's no vocal in there. I might want to put an a cappella over it that's in the same key, which is why I use mixed in key. So what I'll do is I'll put another cue point in there, yeah. So Q, you're going to press Q, sorry, a Q memory point, press memory, and again, it comes up here, the timing, and I'll put blue. So I know that blue is where vocal comes in. Let's just say that point there, the vocal comes out. So I press Q, memory, pink. Right. So now I can see that, but just if I load a track I've not played for ages, right? I know that I can press A and it's going to play on the one straight away. So if I'm messing around and I need to press A, right? So that's a cue point. So that when you press it, it goes to that point. I know that the bass is coming in here, right? So I know that if the bass of this track is 7A and the other track's 2A, that if they're playing over each other, they're going to clash. So I need to get the other track out before it gets to this, right? I then know I've got all this time without any vocals. So I know that I can put an acapella over on it or something else, right? I might think that's a bit too long. So what I might do is go, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a cue point at the beginning of that break, right? Just in case I need to jump to it, right? Let's say I'm here. So I'll go to that, okay? And then I listen through the track. But what I also listen for is bits that I can loop. Okay, so let's go back. So what I might do then is go, okay, let's loop that. And I'll create a loop, right? So C. So I know when I come to this track, I'll listen to the headphones and I'll just press all the cue buttons. If I can't remember the track and see what the cue points are. And if I've got another track in beforehand, I might just get that bit and put it over it and tease me with what's coming in, or put it over it and then think I'll play this record next, but have it on a third deck and then bring that in. So I'm always thinking about this all the time. And then I go through it and I find cue points and I get bass out, and straight away I know what's going on with my records. I know where they are. So I'm all prepared every time I go to a set. You know, in the old days we had vinyl. It was you just had to look at you had to know your music inside out basically. And if you'd forgotten where you were in the track, you'd just look at the light and look for the lines and the dark bits and all that kind of stuff. So yes. Do you have any tips on reading the crowd? Yeah, have they got their hands in the air? Are they dancing? They look like dancing. I'm a big crowd reader. That's the key thing that I always think about. And because I won't try and go in with the obvious all the time. If it's a classics night or something, I will do, right? But I'll look at them and think, if it's a new set, I think, like, what can I get away with here, right? And sometimes, like when I was going DJing in Australia and stuff like that, you'd be like, okay, you know, what will this crowd into? If I play something that would be great normally, it'd be like, oh, that's not gone down well. Maybe I'll try this. Well, that's worked a bit better. Or maybe I'll try this. And then I'll read the crowd and go that way in the set. Even though people were booking me for Jason Hurd, which was all this kind of house and vocal house. And back in the day, sometimes, you know, like a place like Australia, some of the crowds just wanted the more electro type stuff, which I never really played. So, yeah, reading crowds important is look at them, you know, feel the energy. Imagine you're on the dance floor. Okay, thanks everybody for joining. Any more questions before we go? So last night, tomorrow night, I said I was going to do it all January, and then I will pick certain days, and I'll still keep on doing it because I know a lot of people have enjoyed it. Got a lot of private messages, which is really good, and quite a few clients come off this. So if you are interested in the one-to-one mentorship, which we go back to basics and we have a lot more structure in what we're doing, it's a really good way of getting people finishing tracks. It's over 10 weeks. Some people just book one session and then decide they want to do the whole thing. Some people booking 5s. So yeah, tomorrow, let me know what you'd want to do tomorrow. Any more questions before we go? Okay, thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. Hope you've learned something tonight, and get some questions ready for tomorrow.